Hi, and thanks for tuning in for this episode of Coach Etch Tips. I'm Jeff Etchen here again. Excited for this show today. Student engagement, positive role model, um, connecting with students, relationship, teacher-student relationships. That's what we're going to get into today. My guest on the show today is Teresa Stadem, known as TJ Stadem, Coach Stadem. TJ is a teacher in an alternative school that helps kids with credit recovery. And a unique thing about her also is that she is a head track coach for a boys track team. In today's world, we very seldom see many women as head coaches of men's sport teams. So I'm really excited for you to hear this chat today. She's going to talk about how she connects with students, brings culture into the classroom, and really gets students re-engaged that haven't been engaged in learning before, because she's trying to help them make up credits so that they can graduate from school. So enjoy the show today. We'll see you on the show. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in to Coach Etch Tips today. I'm very excited for you to hear from our guest here, Teresa TJ Stadem. I don't know, coach and teach a little bit of everything, but many years ago, she was a student in our school district. And I'm not sure, did I ever have, I wasn't around the high school that much when you were there.
No, yeah, I didn't have you.
I probably never really had you in class, but I knew you're a good athlete and heard a lot about you from working with your track coach over the years. But uh, Teresa has a unique role, not some of her teaching and stuff, but she's also a female and the head coach of a guy's sport. She's a head track coach in the spring here at her high school. And so it's kind of a unique position. There's a lot of men coaching women's sports, but not many women coaching men's sports. So we're going to get into building relationships, helping engage kids and stuff in like the type of students she works with, getting them engaged in school and also connecting with some of those guy athletes and students she has. So TJ, why don't you share a little bit about your professional background, what you've been doing in your 20 plus years of teaching here, and a little bit about what brought you to this profession.
Yeah, pretty much since I began teaching, I've worked in alternative settings. So I started out at a charter school that was geared towards what we would call your kind of alternative at-risk youth. Taught there for a few years. Then I actually took a break from teaching and worked in nonprofit, but I was still in education. I oversaw a charter school and their after-school programming and some of their support programs that they ran for students. And then I ended up in Richfield at RCEP, the alternative school, which was actually kind of fun because I ended up having a lot of the kids that I had worked with at the nonprofit ended up being some of my
Okay.
students. So I kind of get to see them from their young ages and then up. So that's pretty much in my whole teaching career has just been the alternative setting, those at-risk youth, credit wise and or life wise. And when I decided to be a teacher, I didn't know that was where I was going to end up. I kind of fell into teaching because as a student, there were only a handful of teachers that I really felt connected to and like that I was like, okay, I really want to work for those teachers. And I just was like, maybe I should just try to be one of those if I feel like there's not a lot. And so, I just was like, I'm going to be the next, Chris Cause, or I'm going to be the next Kim Niederlucky. Like that was just what I was going to do. And I didn't think anything past what type of students I would work with. And then I student taught at a very affluent school, very opposite of where I've ended up. And I did not like it. I was like, those aren't my people. They don't need me. I didn't feel like I had anything to offer those students. And so when I got my first job and it was in an at-risk place, I said, oh yes, this is where I'm supposed to be. I have a skill set for this group of students. And so that's just where I've been ever since. And then when
Well,
I got the chance to come home, it made it even better, right? Doing a Richfield.
yeah, it's great you found out kind of where your calling was to be. And I think, when we're 19, 20 years old going to college, we don't necessarily know what that's going to look like. And
Exactly.
you drive, you get there, and all of a sudden, I can tell that you're so passionate about it now today, where a lot of people, they come in for a few years, they didn't know what else to do. They just become teachers and like, yeah, this really isn't what the right thing for me. And I'm just kind of curious. You mentioned a couple of those teachers that kind of created that picture for you that like, hey, I could see myself doing something because we don't know what we don't know. And
Exactly.
do you ever feel that responsibility now? You mentioned a couple of teachers that made a big difference for you in your life. Do you feel that sense of responsibility as a teacher and a coach working with your kids at all?
Not really. Like I recognize that I probably have some impact because that's just the nature of the job. But I don't approach it in that way. That I'm here to save them or add enrich something that they don't already have. Because that's making a lot of assumptions about what their life is like when they're not in my classroom.
Yeah.
But I do know that I have a responsibility to just be, if not an additional, the only responsible adult. I don't necessarily mean that I need to hold the mantle of I'm going to inspire you. Like, I'm just going to be here and be a positive role model of what an adult is, and if that ends up becoming something bigger to you, then that's what it is. But I think to assume I'm going to inspire every student that I encounter and I'm going to be the greatest teacher ever is probably putting way too much pressure on myself and maybe too much importance on who I am to some of these students. So
Well, I appreciate that answer because you seem like a very authentic person. It's a big thing now that people, we just got to like be authentic and be who we are and open up the world to kids. And I know you were telling me a little bit ago before we started that you work with students that have had some challenges in school, and your goal is to help with credit recovery and kind of help get them engaged in school. And is there anything that you, and well, first of all, you got to create that relationship and that connection with them. And so let's kind of start with that you do, sometimes just developing trust, just trying to make a connection with them to hopefully get them engaged. Is there anything you do intentionally to start when you first start working with these students?
well, my first thing is always we've got to get to know each other. A lot of these kids come in with they've had a rocky school
Yeah.
journey, and negative interactions with teachers. So they feel a certain way about the school system, and my job is to just let them know, like, that's not what we're going to do here. I'm here for you. And it really is, like you said, it's all about the relationship. So I always just start out with, like, hey, how are you doing? Here's my name. I just start chatting them up, and then being overly helpful and trying to meet them where they're at, getting a feel with how much can they handle maybe those first couple of days, and say, let's just do this little thing, and making adjustments to that student and not being like, oh, here you go, let's dump, all this work on you, or we're going to get done 15 credits in these 2 weeks, that you haven't been able to do in 2 years. We just kind of take it slow and start with the person. Like, who are you? And let's just like I would never just walk up to an adult and start, throwing stuff at them. I would try to feel them out and get to know their personality. I do the same thing with my students. Just, how are you doing? Who are you? What are you into? So nice to meet you. Make them feel comfortable.
Yeah, like I heard a podcast the other day, and I heard the speaker talking about it. And one of the things he thinks is that sometimes schools get so focused on rigor they forget about the relationship part. And especially if you got students that kind of been behind, there's a reason they haven't been getting into the rigor and doing the work. So it's kind of let's put relationships first, and then that students can be more apt to accept the rigor and the work if they actually like and respect you and are connected to you. Because I don't think kids work very hard for teachers they don't like.
Not at all. They definitely don't. And if they do a lot of work in your class, they will find another teacher that they would like and go do your work in their class. So
Yeah,
they
exactly.
will avoid a teacher that they don't feel is authentic or connected to. And I don't like try to be everybody's friend, because that's not what I'm there for. But I want them to know that I'm a safe space and I am there for them. And once they kind of know that, and that I'm not, going to do power struggles, or that I feel I'm some sort of authority over them, it's usually pretty smooth. And it's like, okay, well, she's here for me. And
Yeah, I think you talk about that safe space. It's kind of that word trust. And I think it's really, and especially probably some of the students you work with, it takes a while to develop that trust. And do you ever talk about trust, Len? They know they can trust you. I'm not here just about your grade, but there's a certain amount of trust I can have. But like you said, and they need to respect you. But trust is a big word. If you talk about that a little bit and the importance that plays for you with your students.
yeah, it's definitely important to my students. Like I've said, they've had some different experiences, and then when we look at the demographic of students we work with, being Black and Latino, a lot of them, there's just distrust of authority and authoritative figures anyways. And so I don't necessarily say, like, you can trust me. I do it in, I guess, more sneaky way by giving them space to be themselves, or when they make a mistake, being very obvious that I'm not going to hold that over them or be overly critical of that mistake. And sometimes I even encourage making those mistakes, because that's where the learning is. And
Exactly.
so it's just more being really taking advantage of stuff that shows that I'm can be trusted. So not so much telling them you can trust me, it'll be okay, that kind of stuff, because they don't believe that. You have to
Yeah.
show. And so just making sure when there's an opportunity where maybe in the past someone has done something distrustful, to make sure that I change that narrative and I do something different.
Okay. Do you do much of just the maybe it's in class or connecting with them out of classroom? I heard some teachers they talk about that one-on-one time in the chair and just to just sit down and chat with them and like you talk about getting to know them not just in the classroom but out of the classroom. Is there anything in that type of area, that one-on-one, that you really do that's kind of intentional with getting to know those kids and them getting to know you?
Yeah, it sounds pretty basic, and I feel like most veteran teachers know this. It's just like you just talk. Like as soon as you come in my room, I acknowledge that you have stepped into my room. I say hello. I say how you're doing. If it's before lesson has started, I'll just kind of, hey, what'd you do this weekend? Or remember we were talking about this, and just anything that isn't academic that I either already know about them or I might maybe assume and see what they think. And I just kind of start class that way. And so the kids know that they can chat with me. And
Yeah.
then they will sometimes just pop in to do that because and initiate themselves because they know that I'm open to it. And then if a kid comes in late, it's just, oh, hey, how are you doing? Have a seat. I'll be right with you. And then when I get a chance during work time, I might just check in with them. Just taking advantage to not just be business all the time. Like if I see a kid on their phone taking a break, instead of sometimes being like, "Oh, put that away. You need to be focused." I might walk over and be like, "Oh, what are you watching?" Now I get a conversation going with them, and then I'll say, "Well, it's okay to take a break, but make sure your breaks are shorter than your work time, and let's
Yeah.
keep that balance." And then they're like, "Oh, okay. I thought I was going to totally get sent to the office, but I didn't." And that's kind of things like that. So just finding times to learn about who they are.
How do you, when I haven't asked, I just actually heard from a podcast the other day, and I've also had one teacher said this earlier that I interviewed from, she teaches in a middle school out in Connecticut. How do you have the kids address you? Now you're
Oh,
kind of in a little older setting with, 15, 16, 17-year olds and stuff, but what do you ask them to call you?
my students actually call me TJ. They call me by my nickname. That's just what they call me. The school I worked at before, I went by my first name, so they call me Teresa. But I've never been Miss Stadem or Miss Johnson. That's never. I've always either gone by my first name or my nickname. Um, my track kids call me. A lot of them will call me Coach Stadem or Coach TJ.
Yeah,
Mostly just because that's the culture of sports,
yeah.
coach, whatever. But yeah, at our school, I'm at RCEP, we're all by our first names, with the exception of our math teacher, but that's because she's like 3 years younger than them. So she's gotta
Yeah.
she's gotta create that boundary. But the rest of us all go by our first names.
Oh, that's good. So, one of the teachers that she mentioned what she does when she starts class with this seventh grade math teacher. When the kids come to the classroom, she introduces herself, how she wants them to say her name, and then she asks them their name to hear how they pronounce. She teaches in a diverse school district community like you do, and it's like spelling of my last name is gets botched lots of times when people say it. And so I grew up over the years going hearing every version of it, just like, oh my gosh. But I thought that was a unique thing. And sometimes and just letting kids know how you want to be addressed. And
Yeah,
the world is different. When I was in school 45, 50 years ago, you called everybody Mr., Mr., Mrs. Otherwise, you were getting a ruler over the hand or a swat or something. But it is
yeah,
different. And over the years, I kind of just became Etch. That's kind of where Coach Etch came about.
mm,
Now, you talked about coaching and like to kind of get into that because you are in a unique situation in being a female and coaching a male sport as a head coach.
yeah,
And I know you're a position coach, being a jumpers coach initially as kind of an assistant, but you stepped into that head role, and you're the only woman coach I know of in the history of school I worked in that has been a head coach in one of the guys' teams, let alone even assistant of the guys' teams. How has that gone for you? And what are some of the, I'm sure, each year you grow a little bit in connecting because those teenage boys are a little different than teenage girls.
well, a little bit, but it's been an interesting ride. It's been really fun, and yeah, like you said, I started as I was the high jump coach for boys and girls, and the boys hurdles coach. So I've always been kind of working with the boys, and when we split our assistant staff to work during running workouts, I always went with the boys. So when I did transition to the head coach, for most of them, that wasn't a surprise. They'd already always seen me
Yeah.
around, so that helped. The boys actually, for the most part, I don't really see any difference in how they treat me as they with other coaches that are male.
Uh,
And I think it's because so much of their life is they're being told what to do by women. Like they go, most of their teachers are women, and we don't ever
yep.
question that. And they know how to interact and work with a female. So for them, it's just another. Here's another teacher. She just happens to be outside and not in the classroom. And I think our children come from families where women are, you know, a central figure and kind of dictate and run a lot of things. So for them, I don't think it's that weird to even see me in that position. Other like there's some that initial shock, like, wait, oh, coaches. But once we get going, I don't think it's at all really a hard transition for them at all.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting to hear because I think it'll be great. I mean, I've had the chance to coach both guys and girls sports over the years, and I've enjoyed the experience with both of them, regardless of the age group of it. I hope we start to see more women having a chance to coach boys sports. I think, it's looking like that might take place in the NBA in the near future and some of the professional sports, women being assistant coaches in NFL. And so it'll be interesting to see where the coming years come. But I always like to kind of talk too with people that are coaches and our classrooms, and Omar, Coach O, and we talked about culture. He says every classroom's got culture,
Yep.
but doesn't mean necessarily it's a good culture. What do you do, to develop with it? And like you talked about and it's not just the culture of the environment you create, but we also coach and teach in a district that's very culturally diverse.
Yes.
And I know your classes probably aren't real big, but is there anything you do dealing with the different cultures, but at the same time trying to create your own personal, positive, impactful culture, either in the classroom or on the athletic team? I know I saw your quote on the athletic webpage of what your goal and purpose is as a track coach to do with your teams. If
Mhm.
you share a little bit of that here as we wrap up.
Yeah, in terms of our racial or ethnic culture, it's just all about leaving that space for my kids and making sure they understand that that is respected and appreciated. I've had kids ask me, "Can I wear a do rag at practice?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you can't wear it in meet because it's against the uniform rules." But yes,
Yeah.
at practice, I don't care. Well, just allowing them to kind of bring some of their culture in is what I do in my classroom and on the track as well. But in terms of creating a culture of what our team is or how my classroom runs, the thing for me is always about respect and support. Like those are two key things in both places. We're going to respect each other and we're going to support each other. Even if you don't like that person or you don't know that person's name, we're one. We're all trying to work towards the same goal here. If it's in the classroom, we're all trying to get our credits so we can graduate. If it's
Yeah.
on the track, we're all trying to get better and be faster and jump higher and farther and all of those things. So we're going to respect each other on that journey and support each other. And I model it by how I speak to my students. I don't And my athletes, I don't speak down to them. I don't ridicule them when they make a mistake. Everything is about learning and a learning opportunity. That doesn't mean I don't raise my voice sometimes when they're not doing what I ask, but within a respectful way. So I model it myself. I ask that my assistants model it. I model it between coaches. And then if I see someone not doing it, it's a simple, hey, pull them to the side. Because again, it's about respect. I don't call them out in front of everybody. Let them know, here are my expectations. You know them. Is there something you need me to help you with so that you can reach that expectation? And we kind of just work through it that way. And anytime we set goals, what your goal is different than that person's goal, but I'm going to support you and cheer you on your goal just as much as I'm going to that kid. We can't all be state qualifiers, but we're all out here, trying to be better. And I'm going to support that 10-second drop in the 200, the same that I'm going to, support the kid who just learned how to come out of the blocks. It's all the same.
Yeah, teach. I can't remember the exact words of your statement on the webpage, but it's about those habits and those skills that make you successful in life of working hard, trying to get better, respect and treating people. And I think that's great. And talk a little bit about the profession here, kind of wrap up. And you've been around for 20 years now. And if there's anything you could share that you wish you would have known or heard your first or second year to help you get through these times that you know now, or something that encourage people to stay in this profession, because there is a shortage of teachers and it's growing, and kind of mindset, and then balancing a life. I know you're a mother. You got a new 12-year-old and stuff, and trying to deal with all that coming out of COVID, and earlier in the winter, I talked more about COVID, but it's going to be over the next couple of months. So we won't talk about teachers doing COVID because we ain't going back to this again. But how do you kind of balance all those things in life and just, give people a push and encouragement to hang in there and keep doing what you're doing? Or if you're a new young teacher, you mentioned you're a student teacher and, where you student taught and you're like, this ain't my gig, but, I'm going to go find the place that's right for me. So if you just kind of wrap up with a little bit of that, we'd appreciate it.
I think the biggest thing to teaching is understanding that it's okay to not be perfect. Somehow, some way, we got to this place where teachers are supposed to solve all the problems, be able to juggle all the balls, do all the things all the time, and be happy and smiling at the end of the day. And we that forces us into this box that makes you unhappy because inevitably you're not going to be able to do all of those things.
Yeah.
And the way the profession set up, then we feel bad. Well, I didn't do da da da. And really, what I wish I knew sooner, and maybe it came with having a child and having to say I can't do that because I need to do this.
Yeah.
Um, but what I learned is that balance. It's like it's okay. You're not going to be able to do everything in one day. Today it's these three things. Tomorrow it'll be these three, and just being okay and knowing that if you're knocking those three things out really well, the rest will eventually come. And some of it's just not that important. Like it's okay, it's okay to not do all the things and to rely on your people in your building because the person next door to you might be really good at these two things you haven't quite mastered. And you can lean on them. And you do this and they do that, and you work together as a team to help the students that are in front of you.
Yeah. Great. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate everything you do for the kids here in our community, and because they need it. They need the support of the teachers in their buildings, and taking the time to talk about your unique perspectives and where you teach and stuff. And it's one of my goals for doing this whole thing is just maybe somebody might reach out to you, or you might give something that makes a difference to them, just to connect some people and help people grow and feel good about what they do and keep on going on and giving back to the kids, because that's really our future. And,
Definitely.
as a parent, you want them to give that to your child, and then you're
Yep.
giving that in return. And trust me, you may not feel like you're that role model or something like say Chris or Kim were, but there will be the day, and you're probably already getting to where some kids come back and say, hey, Coach DJ, you know what? You helped me go this way. Remember that one time? And it's like, you go, oh, really? That was like 25, 30 years ago. I'm getting old. I forget stuff now. But I want to thank you for being here today. And those of you tuned into Coach Etch Tips here, if you like what you heard today, click the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring the bell. If you have any comments or thoughts that you heard TJ share today, you like to grow with that, we'd love to hear what you think about it. Give us feedback. And with that, TJ, thanks a lot for being here today. It's been awesome. Good luck with the track season coming. 60-degree weather next week. It'll be awesome, right?
Yes.
All
Let's
right.
hope it stays that way.
All right. Thanks. Take care, folks.